Welcome everybody, I'm Santiago Kneeland and this is The Divine Within, the invisible connection with God. Today we're going to talk about human institutions. It's one of the most fascinating and complex aspects of human evolution, our institutions, government, religion, and the emerging vision of global unity. Joining me is Ryan McGuire, writer, philosopher, and social theorist whose work explores the spiritual and evolutionary forces shaping civilization. He's the author of One World Government and One World Religion, books that invite us to reimagine humanity's future through the lens of divine revelation, moral progress, and spiritual truth. Drawing from the Urantia book and his own deep research into social evolution, Ryan bridges philosophy, faith, and history, challenging us to see how great human experience of governance and religion are not just social constructs, but reflections of a divine blueprint unfolding through time. Thanks for joining us, Ryan. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you for having me, Santiago. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about a topic which is very practical. It has to do with our daily lives and how we are evolving into these institutions and how we create them. So let's begin in this first segment with the social evolution from chaos to civilization. So in our first segments, we're going to trace the origins of human government, born from chaos, sharpened by struggle, and refined throughout the quest for order. What began as a tribal's survival slowly became civilization's great experiment, learning to balance freedom and structure individually and the common good. So, Ryan, what can you tell us about this social evolution, how we're evolving from chaos to order?
Well, I believe that this primitive struggle is still with us today, just in a more sophisticated form. Early governments were focused on protection, defending tribes, managing resources, and keeping order. Today, nations still do the same thing, but through bureaucracy and politics instead of through brute force. You can still feel the survival instinct when governments compete for power and information and control information and justify actions in the name of security. The difference is that now we have the ability to recognize these institutions and evolve beyond the fear-based leadership that we have historically been subject to.
So that's interesting. You're talking about an evolution that started with a very primitive instincts in the clans and how we would protect ourselves from the unknown, from the other clans. And then slowly but surely that evolves into larger clans and they form together and that kind of makes maybe a township, a city, and then we take it all the way into a nation. So in a sense, or in a way, our foundations are based on these fear, or maybe not fear, or maybe born out of fear, but really the sense
Survival
of protecting.
instinct.
Yeah, exactly. That's the word, the survival instinct. And how can we trace that, or what can we say about ours? In the modern times, about those traces that are still within our civilization, I think are still present and not contributing to the overall harmony, let's say, of civilization.
Yes, they still exist and they still influence government and society. But again, we're moving past the fear-based element of it, and we're becoming more aware of our need for one another and the need to move beyond war as a means of bridging nations. We need to unify consciously as an effort that is motivated by our own intellect instead of just animal evolution.
That is true, and I mean, you're pointing out of the animal instincts, and a lot of what people say is then the actual nature of humankind is, I mean, they see that there's a primitive struggle, like you're mentioning, within the systems of governance. I mean, and the way that you're talking about the bureaucrats of the system. So I mean, how can we break from those traditions or those, I mean, it's in within our nature. How can we break from there and move from that primitive struggle into a more organized system?
Again, historically, was through war that this
Okay.
was established. It's one of the great ironies of history. War forces humanity to organize and innovate and cooperate in ways that peace never did. It brought about advances in technology, medicine, and almost all of our social structure. But the real value wasn't in the destructive value, it's in the unity and innovation that arises from it.
Okay.
War is a harsh teacher, showing us the cost of division and pushing us even painfully toward a higher form of cooperation. The challenge now is learning to achieve that same growth without the the next global conflict that would force our hand into a unified government.
And you're saying about unity, and it's interesting. Maybe 20 years ago we would think about a large scale conflict, and it might be something that's unimaginable. Maybe not as we would think of World War I or World War II. But now we're in a stage, and you've come to think of it, and we're so far advanced in technology. We have AI and we have everything, but now we have the Ides of March. The sounds of conflict and war at bay. So how can we, or is there a way? I mean, you're saying that paradoxically, war advances civilizations. And first, I mean, I have two questions here. How can something so destructive also be a force for social progress? Number one. And if not war, what other mechanism can we use in a modern civilization to advance this in such a way? So there's two questions there.
Well, firstly, it forces us to advance because, again, our survival instincts will form the administration and the government and the hierarchy that is necessary to engage in war most effectively against our opponents. So, in doing that, it creates structure and civilization, which is the positive aftermath of war, building that civilization. Which is it's ironic that it requires the conflict initially in order for us to be propelled to the point where we form government and administration. But it's the case, and so if we move past that and we are able to not use conflict as the means to evolve toward a unified government, it would be from conscious cooperation. The next great leap won't come from conflict, hopefully, but from a shared understanding of purpose. Humanity has already proven that it can unite under pressure. Now it has to learn to unite under choice.
Okay, that's interesting.
The next phase of human evolution will be driven by spiritual evolution, people awakening to the realization that we are one family bound by a common destiny. When that happens, progress will come not through survival or conquest, but through conscious creation of a just and unified world.
That's an interesting take, and I mean, with what you're saying, and especially, I mean, we're talking about war and the paradox, of something so destructive, but at the same time, it advances civilization, and I think collectively and individually. I mean, without taking into consideration all the trauma. But there's one thing that it has been very an interesting conclusion, or an interesting thought about why people, the combatants are fighting. If you take any soldier from any country and you ask them, okay, what are you fighting for? Why are you struggling, or why are you killing somebody else? And I mean, anybody would say, oh, it's because of country, it's because of the ideal, it's because of this. But in the bottom line, basically all of them, I was fighting so that my buddy wouldn't die. I was trying to protect my buddy, so it forms a camaraderie, in that you're trusting your life to the one next to you. So I see there's this, like you were mentioning, this social progress, this, unification, or this unity in a military unity that is unparalleled. You know, that bridge or that bond that creates that is created by war is something so human in a way, you know, so loving in a way, but within this paradox. So I've always seen that as something very interesting about the consequences of war.
It is. And it goes to the heart of who we truly are. We desire family and unity and connection with one another. And that's what you see on the battlefield is brothers in arms who are fighting for one another against an enemy. But herein lies the problem with the ideology of an us versus them mentality, which is taught in nationalism ideology. All of our nationalistic teachings promote an us versus them mentality, which creates the enemy mentality that we have to fight against them instead of seeing that we're just one human family. And I see this as a spiritual issue that will be
Okay.
overcome in time. Um, we're seeing a lot more spiritual disconnection when our society forgets its moral center. The system is guided more by ambition and profit rather than truth and compassion. Individuals, when they stop feeling connected to something greater than themselves, institutions become hollow. They still function, but they lose integrity. And what I have learned is that without spiritual alignment, without awareness of divine purpose, a civilization will continue repeating cycles of corruption and collapse. It's inevitable. It's like trying to steer a ship without a compass at night. Eventually, you're going to shipwreck somewhere. So this is the fault in the nationalism ideology that must be overcome. Continuing this is going to only cause us to further global conflict. It's time to move past the nationalistic ideology toward a unified global government.
No, this is really interesting, and I think you look at the times, and I think that's why we see such a polarization. I mean, I see that there's people that do want to have this change, this evolutionary change in our civilization, but I see that there's a lot of people hanging on to the paradigm, to the world as they know it. And I mean, I've always thought of trade and trading, and that's what really drove civilization. If you look at, the ancient world and the Mediterranean, I mean, all the trading that happened there really bridged everyone and really connected everyone. And if you see the Mediterranean, you see all the in North Africa and the Middle East and Europe, the variety and the diversity of cultures there, of races that trade brought together, and that they basically hit it off and created a very unified ancient world that spun around the Mediterranean. And you see that the most powerful empires came out of that experiment or of that phase in history, of the ancient world. So I see that trade is a very good tool for combating or to stop using war in advancing our human civilization.
Our interconnected global market is one of the strongest proofs that we are ready for a global government. No nation today, regardless of how self-sustaining they may appear, can function at the current level without the global market as we know it. We pump oil out of the earth at the basically the same rate that we burn it. And without that interconnected shipment of oil around the world, it shuts down within a couple of weeks. So this is one of the strongest arguments for a global government that I would make is the trade and energy markets that have been established. I would also say that a lot of secular theories
Mm-hmm.
about evolution are described in a purely material driven sense. Economics, social adaptation. But my perspective adds a spiritual dimension to that,
Okay.
suggesting that civilization isn't just evolving biologically or socially, it's evolving spiritually.
Okay.
Behind every phase of government or social development is an unseen divine influence that is guiding humanity toward unification and enlightenment. From that view, politics and progress aren't random. They are part of
Okay.
a cosmic education process designed to mature the soul of civilization itself as we move continually forward.
So this is interesting. You're saying that there is an unseen divinity or superhuman cooperation that we have among us that is kind of guiding us, steering us, maybe not too blunt or too direct, but kind of, pointing us in the way, right?
Absolutely. There's in my view, there is no question about this. We are all indwelt with this spirit that is guiding us toward unification and toward um, having a relationship with the creator of all mankind. The fact that we have so many world religions is not evidence that they're all wrong and that there is no God, as many atheists would argue. It is evidence that God does exist and we are all trying to have a closer relationship with him. So that is, in my opinion, that is self-evident, but obviously that's not the case with many materialistic and purely science-driven individuals.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it really, at least in my case, it really calms me and really it reassures me that there is someone, taking care of you. That you have like a big brother. Maybe it's not God Himself, although He is here, but there are other beings that are vested, in us, and that they're really interested in our because we're part of the same universe. So they are interested in our progress and therefore their own progress and in the progress of the universe. So that really comforts me and tells me that there is something beyond this mundane materialistic world.
Well, absolutely. Yes, it's extremely comforting to know that this is simply the beginning of a eternal journey toward perfection and unending progress. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's very sad to me that this is not the perception of so many other people, even
Well,
in world religions. Their perception of the afterlife is rather mundane compared to what I understand to be the unending progress toward um,
yeah.
perfection.
On the Divine Within podcast, we'll share real conversations to help you find a personal connection with God. My goal is to support your faith, growth, and journey toward discovering the divine within yourself. Join us to deepen your faith and spiritual journey.